Summertime in America. You know, long days, sunshine, family time outside.
Yeah, parks, pools, just the backyard, maybe.
It feels like this really idyllic, safe space, right?
Absolutely.
But what if your own backyard isn't quite so safe?
Hmm.
What if it connects to, well, some really controversial claims about a health threat, one that some sources we look at even suggest might link back to government experiments?
It's definitely a provocative starting point. So today we're doing a deep dive into Lyme disease.
Okay.
And while, most people know it as a tick-borne
Your
illness,
ticks, bullseye rash.
exactly, but our sources, they explore something much more complex. For some, it's a pretty sinister story.
Suggesting it might be engineered or maybe accidentally released.
Yeah, impacting Americans in ways we might just be starting to grasp.
And this is where it probably hits home for a lot of you listening.
Yeah.
Do you, or maybe someone close to you, deal with things like lupus?
Or severe osteoarthritis, maybe bipolar disorder, even schizophrenia or psychosis, persistent vertigo.
Because, according to some of the research we review for this deep dive, these conditions could actually be secondary issues.
Potentially triggered or maybe even just made worse by an underlying Lyme infection. It's a really significant claim.
So our mission today is really to unpack these, well, intensely debated origins of Lyme disease.
Right. We'll look at the two main narratives. Is it just, a natural thing, something that's maybe been around in some form for centuries, even millennia?
Like that Iceman, Ötzi. They reportedly found traces.
Yeah, that's one theory, potentially 5,300 years old.
That's-
Or is the modern version something else?
The man-made or man-mutated disease idea.
Exactly. Allegedly unleashed, as some sources put it, through irresponsible handling by bioweapons researchers.
Okay, so we're going to navigate these, frankly, surprising claims.
Yeah.
We want to equip you with the information.
Because, look, wherever it came from, the immediate issue, according to our sources, is a pretty stark warning.
Yeah, they're saying we could be facing one of the biggest Lyme outbreaks ever this summer.
That the conditions are absolutely ripe for a massive spread across the U.S.
So let's explore how we got here.
Okay. So the modern story of Lyme, as we generally understand it, really starts taking shape in the mid-1970s.
Right, this weird illness starts popping up, Long Island, New York.
And especially Lyme, Connecticut. That's key.
Initially called Montauk knee.
Yeah, because of the joint pain, the knee issues. And it spread fast through the Northeast.
Didn't take too long for researchers to connect it to that bullseye rash, right? From tick bites.
Exactly. And that's when it got the name Lyme disease.
And the bacteria responsible is Borrelia burgdorferi.
Named after Willy Burgdorfer, the biochemist who identified it. And what's really interesting, some scientists call it the most complex bacterium known to man.
Why is that? What makes it so complex?
Well, it's got this unique corkscrew shape, for one. It can also change its outer surface proteins.
Making it hard for the immune system to target.
Precisely. Super elusive. Plus, its life cycle is multi-stage, letting it infect different body systems.
And the effects, they can be really bad.
Oh, absolutely debilitating for some. Intense fatigue, muscle aches all the time, real trouble focusing.
Just unable to function sometimes.
Yeah, almost total incapacity in some cases. And, while some early researchers might have dismissed it as psychosomatic,
People who actually have it know it's very real.
very real and utterly debilitating, as the sources say. And it's crucial to remember that classic bullseye rash, it's not always there.
Right, you can still have Lyme without the rash.
Definitely. Which makes diagnosis tricky sometimes.
So looking bigger picture, the claims about Lyme's impact are pretty wide-ranging in our sources.
They really are, suggesting it might trigger or enhance other conditions.
We mentioned schizophrenia, psychosis, severe osteoarthritis.
Lupus, bladder issues, bipolar delusions, vertigo, even encephalitis, that's infection of the brainstem.
And some researchers even link multiple sclerosis as a possible cofactor.
Now, just to be really clear here, the sources aren't saying these conditions only happen because of Lyme.
No, but that Lyme might be the trigger, or makes them worse in people who are infected.
Exactly. It paints a much broader, more systemic, and frankly more concerning picture of what this bacteria might do.
Which brings us right back to the big question. Where did this specific strain actually come from?
Right. If ticks spread it, where did the ticks get this version?
And you mentioned the two competing ideas.
Yeah. First, the natural theory. Variants have been around a long time, maybe. Anecdotal reports back in the 1800s.
And the Ötzi Iceman potential case.
Right, suggesting an ancient origin for something like Lyme.
But then there's the other side, the much more controversial one.
The idea that modern Lyme is man-made, or at least man-mutated.
Unleashed, possibly accidentally, by bioweapons researchers.
And this narrative often weaves in post-World War II history.
Okay, let's unpack that connection a bit. How does that work in these sources?
Well, it often starts with Operation Paperclip.
The U.S. program after WWII to bring over German scientists.
Right. Secretly bringing them in, many with Nazi ties, to use their scientific knowledge. President Truman had actually ordered against bringing over known Nazis.
But the sources claim that was almost impossible because so many top scientists were involved with the regime.
That's the claim, that the government effectively bleached their records, created new histories to hide Nazi affiliations.
And some of these scientists had worked on pretty sensitive stuff during the war.
Very controversial research, yes. And one name that comes up repeatedly in this context is Erich Traub,
Okay, who was he?
a German veterinarian virologist specialized in infectious animal diseases. He was the lab chief at the Nazis' main bioweapons lab on Rims Island.
Rims Island, okay.
Also a member of a Nazi motor corps reported directly to Heinrich Himmler. And our sources state biological warfare experiments definitely happened at Rims.
So how does he connect to the U.S. side of this story?
Well, in 1949, Traub was brought to the U.S. under Operation Paperclip.
Okay.
And he reportedly consulted at Fort Detrick.
The Army's biological warfare headquarters in Maryland.
Right. Consulting specifically on animal diseases from a biowarfare angle. Things like foot and mouth disease.
And the claim is his work.
The sources say his information laid the groundwork for Fort Detrick's offshore animal disease lab for germ warfare studies. The one on Plum Island.
Plum Island.
Yeah.
Okay, now the location seems important. You said it's really close to Lyme, Connecticut.
A mere 13 miles, according to the source material. Right across the water from where that first big outbreak happened.
That proximity is definitely a key point for people who believe the man-made theory.
It really is. And they point to migratory birds.
How so?
Well, birds fly back and forth between the island and the mainland all the time.
So the idea is birds could carry diseases off the island.
That's the speculation, yes. That they could transport pathogens from Plum Island to Connecticut, New York.
And this leads to the core claim.
That Lyme disease was either developed there or at least studied, maybe modified.
And then somehow got out. Spirited from the facility to the mainland, as one source puts it.
Right. Now, how exactly it got from a lab into birds or other animals, that's still debated within these theories. But migratory birds are often mentioned.
And there have been worries about security at Plum Island.
Oh, yeah. Long-standing concerns. Our sources mention former employees talking about lackluster security measures.
And wasn't there a specific incident,
Yeah.
like an outbreak?
Yes, a well-documented 1978 incident. An outbreak of foot and mouth disease forced an evacuation of the island.
So they moved everything indoors after that? Animals? Research?
Reportedly, yes. But here's the kicker, according to the sources. 2 more outbreaks followed, this time inside the biocontainment units.
Inside, wow. That raises some serious questions about containment, doesn't it?
It certainly fueled criticism. Michael Carroll, who wrote Lab 257, The Disturbing Story of the Government's Secret Germ Laboratory.
I've heard of that book.
He's cited as a very outspoken critic. He links Plum Island not just to Lyme, but also potentially to West Nile virus outbreaks.
Calls it a biological 3-mile island. That's
Yeah.
strong language.
It is. And the sources say his book uses declassified documents, interviews, even access to the island itself to build his case for that Plum Island-Lyme connection.
And beyond that specific link, there are other strange stories around Plum Island.
Yeah, the sources mention other strange incidents. Things like weird animals washing ashore nearby the so-called Montauk Monster was one famous case.
Right, I wrote that.
These things aren't directly tied to Lyme origins in the claims, but they add to this kind of mystique and unease surrounding the facility.
The source also vaguely mentions people going missing, rampant outbreaks in the area, just painting a picture of uncertainty.
It creates a backdrop of concern. And against this backdrop, you have millions of people really suffering from Lyme disease.
Yeah, people who were sick for years, often with weird symptoms their regular doctors just can't figure out.
Right. Only to finally get a Lyme diagnosis and realize that was the root cause all along.
And this is where things get really difficult for patients, according to these sources, the medical establishment itself.
Yeah, many patients feel completely let down. They claim mainstream medicine often refused to treat them properly, or sometimes wouldn't even acknowledge Lyme as the cause of their problems.
That must be incredibly frustrating and disheartening.
Absolutely. And our sources highlight what they call a few brave doctors.
Doctors who actually listened and tried to help.
Yes, doctors who apparently risked and sometimes lost their licenses and practices to treat these patients.
Using treatments the patients felt actually worked.
Treatments that, from their perspective, have been proven to reverse their dire circumstances.
So why would the medical establishment resist? Or, as the sources claim, blacklist these doctors and treatments?
Well, the sources point pretty directly. They say it comes down to the almighty dollar, describing it as astonishing corruption. The implication being that people are suffering, even dying needlessly.
To protect financial interests within the system. Wow. That's a very serious accusation.
It's a central theme in the documentary, Under Our Skin.
Okay, tell us about that.
Our sources claim that the Infectious Diseases Society of America, the IDSA, actually tried to stop public broadcasters from showing it,
Really?
calling it a public danger, full of conspiracies.
But it did get shown.
Thankfully, yeah. The source says PBS didn't fold under the pressure, aired it in many areas. And it's available now, like on Amazon.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there about the disease, its potential origins, the struggles patients face.
And now this warning about a potentially huge outbreak this summer.
Right. Spreading beyond the usual hotspots, maybe. Like the Northeast, the Great Lakes.
Potentially moving into other parts of the country where people might be less aware, less prepared. That's the concern.
Is there any way to know if an outbreak is coming? Any warning signs?
Well, interestingly, yes. Dr. Richard Ostfeld, he's a disease ecologist in New York. He has this unique way he believes you can predict a major Lyme outbreak. It's connected to acorns.
Acorns. Really? How does that work?
His research suggests more acorns means more food for mice. More mice means more hosts for ticks. More ticks surviving and breeding.
Means more Lyme disease.
And apparently because of warmer weather, milder winter conditions in many places.
We have a lot of acorns this year.
A bumper crop, yes. Which, according to his model, points towards a potential bumper crop of Lyme cases, too.
Okay, so given that potential threat, what can people actually do? What are the practical steps?
Our sources offer some clear advice. First, really learn how to remove a tick properly.
Right, because getting it wrong can leave the nasty parts inside you.
Exactly. Second, dress smart when you're outdoors, especially in grassy or wooded areas. Cover up vulnerable spots.
Makes sense. Keep them off you in the first place.
Third, focus on general health. Keep your immune system strong.
The sources emphasize that. A strong immune system helps fight off the worst of it.
Yeah, helps resist the most heinous aspects and those potential secondary illnesses we talked about.
What else?
Symptom awareness is key. Learn the less obvious, the elusive symptoms of Lyme.
Things you might not immediately connect to a tick bite.
Right, so you can seek treatment early, hopefully before it gets severe.
What about repellents?
Natural repellents are suggested as an option, but with a caution. Check the ingredients carefully, make sure they don't have other harmful chemicals.
Good point.
And finally, the sources mention considering immune-boosting supplements, proper vitamins, basically keeping your body healthy and helping it cleanse toxins.
Supporting that immune defense again.
It's highlighted as really vital for preventing the more severe outcomes.
Okay, so to kind of wrap this up, we've covered some really extraordinary claims today.
Definitely. Intense debates around Lyme disease, from these alleged origins as potentially a bioweapon, maybe with Nazi ties, links to Plum Island.
All the way to the very real struggles sufferers face getting diagnosed and treated by mainstream medicine.
And layered on top of that, this immediate warning about a potentially big outbreak this summer.
It's a lot to take in, a complex picture. But knowing about these different claims, these different perspectives, it seems really important.
Absolutely. Being informed, being proactive. We hope this discussion helps you do that.
Yeah, maybe share this deep dive with friends, family. Encourage them to look into the resources mentioned, like Carol's book, Lab 257, or that documentary, Under Our Skin.
It's information worth considering.
So thinking about all this, these profound claims about hidden origins, the challenges within our health systems, what does this deep dive maybe challenge you, the listener, to reevaluate?
Maybe about how complex health information gets shared, or how we assess scientific evidence when there are competing narratives, and perhaps what's our own personal responsibility for understanding our health in a world where, while things aren't always as they seem,